Hi there, I'm Eitan, and welcome back to Wix Wiz. Today I want to talk about the new Wix GitHub integration. And this is something that is not yet available to everyone, but if you are a developer and you ask to join the beta testing or waitlist or whatever you want to call it, then it shouldn't be too hard to get in. And I just want to demonstrate kind of what you can currently do with this integration. Maybe there will be more stuff that you can do in the future, but I think it's kind of cool and I wanted to test it out. I haven't used it very thoroughly myself, so this is kind of like an exploration, but I'll show you the basic setup and some things that I've discovered that you can do with it. So in order to enable the GitHub integration, you're going to want to go here on the left side. Obviously, you want to have dev mode turned on. And here you have the option to connect to GitHub. You're obviously going to want a GitHub account. If you haven't done that, then go ahead to GitHub and create your GitHub account. And basically what's going to happen is we're going to create a new repository for the JavaScript and other related files of this project. And then we're going to be able to develop our Velo code using Wix APIs and everything on our own IDE on our laptop. So, for example, using VS Code or whatever other IDE you choose. And it'll also allow collaboration on the same website in terms of coding. So, if you've been using Editor X, then you probably know that several people can collaborate in terms of editing the site. But if multiple people are trying to use dev mode, then only one person will have access to the code at a time. Whereas I'm pretty sure that with this GitHub integration, you can circumvent that, and I'll show you how I think that works out. So in order to connect to GitHub, you're going to click here, Connect to GitHub. If you don't see this button and instead you see Join Waitlist or something like that, just go ahead and fill out the form, and hopefully you will get approved. So I'm going to click here, Connect to GitHub, and then I have here some kind of disclaimers. So once my site's connected, I'll only be able to edit code from the local IDE. That's fine. And the code on the online editor will be read-only, and I have to push the commits through the remote repository. So let's go ahead and continue. So first I'm going to need to sign into my GitHub, which it did automatically. You can see here, Eitan Waxman, that's my GitHub. And I'm going to create a repository called, let's call it Editor X GitHub. Okay, so that's going to be the name of the repository on my GitHub account. And I'm going to click Create. And then install the Velo application. So I'm just going to click Install. Here I need to kind of confirm that it's really me because I'm authorizing Wix to kind of use this in order to install something onto my GitHub account. So I'm just going to put in the authorization code that I got here, and it's one-time use, so you won't be able to really do anything with that. And then I'm going to give it access to only the repositories that really need it. And you can see here that it has access already to one previous experiment that I did with the GitHub integration. And here it has, I'm going to give it access to the Editor X GitHub. If you want to give it access to more repositories, then you can, but there's really no reason to. So I'm going to go ahead and approve and install. And then wait a little bit for whatever it's doing to happen. So it says performing initial commit. So basically it's saving all of the files onto the GitHub repository. Now I have the instruction to set up my local environment. So let's follow these steps. I'm just going to open a command line. I personally use a terminal called Hyper, but you can use whatever terminal you want. I'm just going to drag this. Whoa. One moment. I'm going to drag this onto my, oh my gosh. Why is it so big? Go big, come back. Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know why it had to be so big. But basically, you're just going to copy these instructions to the command line. So the first one is going to be npm install the Wix CLI. And I'm just going to go ahead and Control-Shift-V. And since I've already done this, it might not look exactly like this when you're installing it on your computer. But basically, you'll see some kind of loading bar, and it's downloading different files that are needed for this. And okay, great. So that's done. And now the next thing we're going to do is we are going to need to clone the repository. I will say that I had some trouble cloning the repository using this line here that they give us. I'll try it again one more time just to entertain ourselves. Yeah, but for some reason, it didn't work for me when I was doing it using this, using the line that they give here. But when I did go to my repository and copy the actual cloning command from GitHub, it did work. So let's head over there. So this is the GitHub repository that was created automatically by Wix. And it's worth checking this out anyways, just because you have here different explanations about how to use this integration, including testing code with local editor, which we'll talk about soon. But basically, in order to clone the files to my computer, I used this this cloning method. So I just went over here and I copied the line, the HTTPS cloning snippet, and I went into Hyper and just pasted that right over there. And basically, it's not working this time. Why not? Oh, I need to write clone. Ha ha ha. So git clone, in English, of course, git clone, and then paste that line right over there. And now it's cloning into a file. If you don't want to put it right inside of your, main directory, then you can first go, let's say, cd desktop, and then do it on your desktop or something like that. But I don't really care where it's going to be, and I'll probably be erasing it right after this tutorial anyways. If you're not familiar with any of these command line commands, I would kind of do a quick tutorial on YouTube. Just search for like basic command line, because it is important if you're approaching something like this kind of GitHub integration. I mean, these are things that you'll need to know also to do all of the the git commands and the pushing the updates and stuff like that. So now that I have cloned the files, let's go back to our site and see what the next thing I need to do is. So I need to cd into that file itself. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to cd into that file. So now you can see here that I'm inside of that file that we just cloned. And then they told us to run npm install, which will install all the dependencies that are listed in the files here. And now we're all prepped. And what I actually want to do is I want to open this now in VS Code. So in order to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to cd out of this file. And I'm going to write code editor x GitHub. And what this should do is it should open this file in this folder, inside of VS Code, which is what's happening right now here on the bottom. And if I just bring this right over here onto the screen, you should be able to see it. Yes, I trust the authors. And right here on the left, you can see all of the files for my Editor X website right over here. And what's really important to us is this source. And here you can see backend pages public. So these correspond to the files that you would usually have on a Wix website. So you have pages. So here you see about, contact, home, which corresponds to, if I just head back to the site, so I'm going to put this on one side. and then have our site here open on the other side. And then, yeah, so we can go ahead and close this. And now let's just compare this to what we have in Wix. So you can see here we have our page code. So we have home, about, contact, as well as master page. And that's what we have over here. And you can see that the code kind of corresponds. So I wrote some code on the home page, which is just this console.log hello GitHub integration. And you can see that it exists also over here. And in terms of the other stuff that we have the backend and public, which are the files that you would find over here on Wix. And now remember that we can't really edit the code over here inside of our main editor anymore, but we have to edit the code here on our local editor, and that will update the code that we have here on the Wix website. So if I just close this, panel, sorry. Yeah, so here you could see the hello GitHub integration, and I'm going to close this as well. Yeah, just so we could see here. And so you're viewing the latest code from origin main as read only. Okay, so here it's prompting me to set up my local dev setup. So let's click on that. And okay, so this was basically what we followed through. And then they encourage us to open the local editor to edit and preview your site and test your code. So before I do that, I just want to see what happens if I change the code while I'm on the regular editor. So now I'm on the regular editor, not the local editor. And let's see what happens if I add, let's say, another line of code here. So I'll just say testing, testing. And I'm going to save the code over here. And let's see what happens in terms of integration. So you could see here that nothing happens on my main site. But if I go over here and I open a terminal here in VS Code, and then I go into Wix Dev, just like they told me to, basically what's going to happen now is it's going to create a local editor. And this is slightly misleading, at least it was to me, because when I think local editor, I think this is something that I'll be able to do offline, but that's not the case. Okay, it's actually just a local instance of the website that is still connected to the internet and connected to your site, and you can still see things like who else is working on the site, like I'll show you in a second. But you can see here that this URL is not localhost something. This is still a website. This is still the Editor X website. So this is kind of local, but it's not local in the sense that you might think, if you were working on a regular web dev project, and you open it on a local server, you can kind of work offline. That's not the case here. But you can see that my testing is being featured in my local editor. Okay, and if I make any other tests here, any other changes to the code, let's say I change this console.log to say just hello world, and I go ahead and I save that, Control S, then you should see here momentarily that, yeah, you see here it's syncing the files, and any moment here inside of the local editor, you should see that it'll change to say hello world. And the speed of this would depend on your on the speed of your internet, but you can see here it just changed to say hello world. And then if I want all of these updates to be featured on my main site as well, okay, so I'm doing some work here on my local site, and I want all of this to be updated on my central Wix website as well, so that all the other people that I'm working with on my team, let's say, can see the code that I've written and work off of it as well. So that we would need to do a push. Okay, we need to push our updates to the kind of the main branch, and let's go over here and try and make that update. So I'm just going to go out of the Wix dev mode. I'm going to try and exit that through the terminal using Control C. Okay, so that didn't really work for me. Typically that would exit. I'll try adding a new terminal. Okay, I'm just going to do this in a new terminal because I couldn't really. Usually, typically, Control C would exit kind of some kind of development mode or something like that. But let's just do this over here. So I'm going to say git add all the files to the staging. I don't know what it's called, staging ground, staging platform, and then I'm going to commit this. So git commit first commit. Then I'm going to go ahead and commit that, and then I'm going to push it. So git push update origin main, and everything seems to be in order. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to our main site, and your code was updated with the latest commits from origin main. And now you can see that also on the main site, the one that is not my local editor, but the regular editor has also been updated. So if you want to see immediate updates while you're working using the IDE, then you're going to want to look at the local editor. And when you're confident that everything is working well, then you can push to the main editor. And one thing I want to see is just what happens. So that was in terms of code, but let's see what happens if I add an element in the local editor and how that affects everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our home page here as well. Okay, so I'm on the home page. Let's close that off. Excellent. And why don't I see, okay, let's make this full screen. Okay, so here we have this text GitHub integration. And what I'm going to do is on the local editor, I'm going to add an element right under GitHub integration. Yeah, so this is working quite slowly, as would be expected, because I have two editor X's open yeah, on my website at the same time. I'm going to go and add in a button. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to, let's call this change button. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an event listener to this button. So, okay, so you, yeah, habits, old habits die hard. So I was trying to edit here inside of my local editor, but this is where I'm supposed to be using my handy dandy IDE. So let's move this over to the side. And then the code I'm going to want to write over here. Okay, so let's close, oh shoot, can't close it right now, but over here I'm going to add, what did I call this? Change button. On click. And then let's say, yeah, so I don't know if I'm still, yeah, we should be good. I don't know why this is coming off as, yeah, I don't know why that's underlined in red. But what did we call this here? Let's call this title. Okay, and then I'm going to say that title dot text should be equal to, let's say, I don't know, integration working. Okay, so basically I'm trying to test out a few things here. I'm trying to see what happens if I add a new element on the local editor. I'm trying to see what happens if I change the IDs of the elements, and I'm trying to see what happens if I add code that has some kind of interaction between these newly added elements and IDs, and see what works and what doesn't work. So I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to save. And okay, so local code was updated. I guess this connection here between my IDE and website is working. I'm a little, I don't want to say taken aback, but something's going on here in terms of these, that these are underlined red. I don't know if it's my mistake or if, yeah, or if there's just something slow going on here. But let's see what happens now when I push my code to the main site. So I'm going to say git add, git commit, button added. Then git push update origin main. And it pushed all the updates to the site. So now let's go to our main site and let's see what's going on over here. So yeah, it might take some time for the updates to be pushed, which is kind of to be expected. Code was updated with the latest from origin main. Okay. Let's put our let's put that in main screen. Okay, so really cool. So the button was added and everything was changed and the code was added as well. Okay, so this worked as I had hoped. That changes that you make on your local editor can then be pushed to the main website using like a regular GitHub push. Okay, so just by updating the branch as you would with a regular GitHub file, which also kind of means that within these files here is all of the Wix code for your site. So not only the page code for the Velo, but technically all of the, I guess all of the, let's go peeking around here. I don't know. Now I'm curious how exactly they are doing this. I mean, technically, all the code for the site would need to be somehow stored somewhere, unless, it just knows that when you push the new Velo code, it needs to contact the local editor, which is actually a version of the site which is stored somewhere else. Yeah, I'm kind of curious how they're doing it. Let's see if it says anything over here. Write Velo code, test Velo code, preview, publish. Yeah, not much. And I think we've touched on all the features that they highlight over here. Maybe I'll do some poking around later and see if I find anything new. But in terms of tutorial, that's the gist of it. It was pretty cool. I like the overall experience. I think that, I mean, it's definitely, I guess, good as a collaboration tool for, if you need to have multiple people coding the website at the same time. But since kind of you already have the collaboration on the elements, so you could have multiple people in editor X kind of adding elements and changing them at the same time. So there really isn't that much of an added value if I'm kind of working on it on a local editor first and then pushing it. It's actually a bit of a detriment unless it added these elements when I was working on my local editor. Let's experiment with that. I didn't check that. So I'm just going to go ahead. I'm going to add an element. Let's say I'll just add an image in. Put that right under the button. And now I'm going to go to the main site and see. Yeah, okay. So that's what's been going on. So I assumed there was more magic here than there was. So just when you edit on the local editor and add elements, it makes those changes on the main editor as well. So I'm not really sure what the big differences between local editor and the main editor, to be honest. Maybe can I add code here? No, I can't add code here. maybe that the code that I add only affects what happens on my local editor. Yeah, that would make sense because the code hasn't been pushed. Hasn't been pushed yet. Let's experiment with that. I was about to end the tutorial, but changed my mind. So let's go back to our pages. Let's go back to the home page. And now I'm going to change this. That instead of integration working, I'm going to make this say local editor. Okay. So now technically, if I'm going to save it, technically now, so when I test this out in the local editor, it should say local editor, but in the main editor, it should still say, what did I write before? Something integration. Okay, so let's just see. So I'm going to go into preview mode here in the local editor, click start now, and now it says local editor. But I'm going to go to here and say preview and click here, integration working. Okay, so basically the point of the local editor is that I can write code in my local IDE and test the effects of the code on the site without the code affecting the main site, but all the changes to elements and the canvas of the editor X are completely synced up. That wasn't happening when I pushed to GitHub as I had thought, but it was actually happening live. I just didn't check the site before I actually pushed to GitHub because I kind of thought I knew what was going on. Yeah, so overall, I guess it's good if we want to collaborate several people working on code simultaneously on an editor X site. I guess that could be valuable. Otherwise, if I'm just a solo developer working on a site, no real reason to use this unless you really, really, really like your local IDE. But I think that one of the advantages of using something like Wix or Editor X is that I kind of look at my code right here under the page, and for me that's like the easiest thing in the world. I can also change here, between dark and light mode. So yeah, I think that as a solo developer, definitely just still using this IDE, the built-in Wix IDE, it works totally fine. Working on a team, yeah, I can see myself using the GitHub integration. If you like this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.